Ryan, Jules, welcome to Undivided.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got a lot to discuss, and you guys keep the receipts, which I always love. Not that I wouldn't take your word for it, but some of this stuff is beyond believable, and I think if I didn't see it in the emails and stuff, I wouldn't believe it. So, just so our viewers know, Ryan, we're going to talk to you a lot about what you actually experienced within OSD, but Jules, you have some really important additional insights that you have that we want to discuss, and so that's kind of how we're going to break this up. But Ryan, you were a teacher in Olympia. What did you teach?
I taught fourth grade and third grade.
Why did you want to be a teacher?
Oh my gosh. Well, my mom was a teacher. My fifth grade teacher was a great example of a fun teacher. When I struggled academically, man, he sure made it fun. And so I had some great examples around me, people I wanted to be like, coaches and teachers. So it's time to pay it forward. So it was my opportunity to kind of follow in those footsteps and teach. And what a great spot to be. I thought it was Olympia School District.
Yeah, how long did you work at OSD?
I was in the district for, I think, 5 years.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not going to get into your personal politics now, but I would say for at least the last 4 or 5 years, there's been, quite a bit of coverage of some of the progressivism in the Olympia School District. Certainly that kind of matches the city's progressivism. So did you have concerns going in that this would be problematic in the classroom?
Not when I entered the district. We were living in a Renton area for 12 years plus, taught up there, transitioned back. We are products of Olympia School District.
Okay.
And so
Go Bears.
nothing better than getting back into our district and into a certain neighborhood. We wanted to be in that Centennial neighborhood. So we really were intentional in that to get our daughter, as she was starting kindergarten, to be in there. None of this was on the radar. Teachers I knew, teachers when I moved in. Those first couple years, none of it was there. And not till right before COVID. COVID definitely shut the light on that. And then once I got into some of the buildings, we started hearing and seeing more of it. And so it wasn't there, but the last couple years, it definitely started picking up. And as I transitioned to Centennial for my final 2 years, yeah, it was definitely in every staff meeting and every email and communication with the district too.
Yeah. And Jules, I think this is something, what I just heard from you guys, a consistent thread that I hear from other parents who are willing to come forward and speak out, is they love the district so much. A lot of them went to that district. They graduated, they want their kids. So for you guys, what did it mean, Jules, to be able to send your daughter to the same school that you went to?
I was really proud. I mean, I knew once she hit kindergarten age, we were going to move back to Olympia to our family and friends in our district and get in there. I wanted her to be a bear like us and graduate from Olympia High School. And so it's just I've take a lot of pride in our community, and it was a dream.
Mhm.
It was just what we've always hoped for and expected great things because that's all we knew.
Mhm.
It's and So this was pretty devastating.
Yeah. I'm going to ask your husband the same question, but you know him probably better than anyone else when it comes to being a teacher and kind of influencing kids. I mean, is your husband the right person for that kind of job?
Oh yeah. You're talking to a guy who has so much experience teaching. He's dynamic in his job. He loves it. He invests his time, tons of personal time. He would start clubs, STEM clubs, extracurricular things for the kids. I mean, he's a teacher that when he was at Pioneer Elementary School, that when he was just there filling in for a year for a teacher, right? And when that job ended, the PTA and parents sent in just inundated the district with letters saying, don't let him go. We want to keep him. I mean, he's a teacher that invests in the kids. He puts his all in there. He loves the families. He's a great team. He's always volunteering for the union reps that whatever they need. He supports his teams. He's a definite team player, and he's got a passion for families and kids and teaching. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think this is an important line of conversation before we get into this other nonsense because, we need good teachers, we need passionate teachers, and
Yeah.
what you bring to the classroom should really be the only thing that matters. So, Ryan, what was your philosophy as you went about teaching young kids? I mean, what's your philosophy as a teacher?
I think number one is building that relationship with them and the families. It's a partnership, and we got to work together. And I think when you got a chance to get to know the kids, you get to know their learning styles, their strengths, their weaknesses, and they need to build trust in order for you to teach them. And so I know it's so important to gain that trust by getting to know them, getting to know their families. I loved attending sporting events after school, go seeing them outside, go to recess with them, really pursue them and build that relationship. And then I've seen the impact in school when they can trust me because I had a learning disability. I struggled in elementary school. And so when those kids come in and they're struggling, I can relate to them and I'm going to pursue them and invest into their interest. And so I see the impact in the classroom. And same with the parents. We got to partner with the parents. And I think that's where the last couple of years we've lost that connection. And they're a key piece to the work that we got to do in the classroom. We need the parents on board with us.
Yeah, I know a lot of people listening to this will agree with that. So let's get into sort of where things went wrong. Were there some initial things that started to stand out to you? You mentioned kind of during that pandemic period that maybe at first were just sort of annoying or bothersome, but kind of grew from there. Anything that initially was like, this is weird.
Probably started a lot with the school board proclamations with the BLM. That was during the BLM movements, and a lot of the proclamations, the lessons, and the mandatory lessons that we needed to include into our normal instruction time. And coming out of COVID, teachers were already overwhelmed or stressed. Our kids were falling behind, and our plates started getting a little more full with some of the BLM and pride stuff that was coming our way. Our staff meetings went away from academics and interventions and support to more of those topics that were things that we weren't trained in. We didn't have any training. And so how do we have those conversations? How do we deliver that message and content? And so that I think staff meetings changed professional development. I can recall some professional development on just different things, white shame and book studies started changing to away from the academics more to some of the political issues that were being pushed into our classrooms. And the feeling I had and a lot of our staff felt were like, wow, this is pretty heavy. Our kids are young. I was teaching third grade. I'm not ready if I'm ready to have that conversation. That's a conversation what parents should have. So a lot of the staff meetings and things from the top down, from the school board to the superintendent out to the principals, we started seeing that more and more.
Yeah, and it wasn't just, so I think what's interesting obviously about you guys is it's not just from the educator perspective, it's also from the perspective of a parent, right? So this is happening, I know it's happening, and then also my child is going to this school district. So like I said, you guys have a lot of receipts for some of the communications that happened, and I want to go through some of those because there's some of those areas where as a parent, you want to opt your child out, and we're kind of told like, nope, can't do that. So we're going to get to that. But I want to get your guys's insight into an incident that happened that you have knowledge of that we reported about on this show that the school district would give us very little information on. So at Centennial, there was, or maybe is, I don't know if she's still there, a teacher named Jennifer Knight. And as we reported, she had really kind of pressured a young child into, that's my opinion on it, into changing their gender, sent out emails saying we've got to keep this from their parents, was sending private communications with this child. You were there during that period, correct, Ryan?
That's correct.
And how much did you know that was happening while it was happening?
I didn't know that as far as the classroom from our daughter, who was good friends with her. They were in the same class, didn't hear that. But I remember the first staff meeting. I can't remember exactly where it was in the year, January, February, having a staff meeting. And our principal and Jennifer Knight were kind of leading that meeting. And all of a sudden, we talked about name changes and gender changes. And how do we hide that? How do we hide that from our families and specifically their parents? We used a program called Skyward for grades and information where parents can access that. And I remember Jennifer Knight getting up and talking about, here's how we hide that information. We can go into here and you can put in the gender change and the name change. So staff can see it, but not parents. We also had conversations about the kids and how to process that. So I started seeing emails coming in through staff emails, but then also that staff meeting and a few that followed that were more focused towards that. And so that kind of caught a lot of us off guard. It wasn't in our staff meeting agenda and just came up that I remember that meeting. A lot of us were kind of looking at each other like, wow, where'd this come from?
So let me, just so I'm understanding this
Yeah.
correctly, you're in a staff meeting while Jennifer Knight, a fellow teacher, is talking about
Mhm.
here's how we hide this information for parents, but your daughter's also in her class, right?
Yeah,
So
that's correct.
I'm assuming you told your wife this. So, Jules, as a mom, when you know because your husband's an educator that they're having meetings talking about your daughter's teacher is leading
Mhm.
meetings talking about how to hide information like gender identity from parents, what's going through your mind?
Well, I'll tell you, Ryan actually did a really good job, like not telling me right
Oh, good
away.
for
I
you,
mean,
Ryan.
those are teacher meetings. And he told me one time, like once it went along, he shared, he goes, actually, this has been being talked about for a while when he finally shared with me. Um, and that was like, I don't know, May or June or
It took a little
something.
while. Yeah, I was in shock.
Because he would, well, it's also confidentiality. It's their teacher meetings, which I get. Um, but I when I finally, I mean, by the time I heard about it, I was like, what? Because there had already been some things going on that um and it was really scary because I just realized, how is this not only affects my daughter with some things going on in Jennifer Knight's classroom, but also my husband's job.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a problem talking to people when I have concerns, but I knew I needed to kind of be delicate because this could affect my husband's job as well.
Well, because as
Um,
we're going to find out and learn, they're pretty quick to label someone like a hateful, hateful
Yeah,
yeah,
bigot. And so, if
yeah.
you go to the school and complain about this kind of gender ideology stuff, it's going to rub off on your husband. I mean, I
right. And I could
totally get
see
that.
him at home, how it was affecting him. It was really hard. Because when he did tell me, it was finally when it was really heavy. It just became really heavy on him.
Well, you had to worry, Ryan. Like, if she's in here directing teachers to do this, she's my daughter's teacher. So,
Yeah.
what did it cross your mind? Like, is my daughter? Is she going to convince my daughter to like change her gender or something? Were you even remotely concerned about that?
Oh yeah. I mean, my emotions from that meeting and every day walking into that building, not only for me as a teacher and my 28 kids that I have to lead and the parents that trusted me with their kids. Same time, I have my daughter in a fifth grade classroom with that teacher. So my anxiety level, my mental health was just, I mean, pulling into that parking lot every day. What's next? Every staff meeting. Oh boy, I remember walking into the library, just, okay, what it's going to be today. Every email I opened up. And I mean, it was weekly, sometimes daily, just a reminder of, wow, we're shifting big time. Coming out of COVID again, where our focus was on the academic, we need to get these kids back on track. And we just went the opposite direction, every professional development again. So, yes, it was a tough environment to walk in. And bit by bit, less people looked at me, less people talked to me. I had great friendships in there, friendships before I even went there, because it was our neighborhood school. I knew kids, I knew teachers, I knew parents. And yeah, definitely less conversations. And I'm a very relational person, try to have staff gathering, let's go do stuff. And that was, yeah, it was quiet shoulders often when I walked through the hall.
Well, you mentioned at the very beginning that, keeping parents in the loop was important to you in your
Yeah,
philosophy as an educator. And now here you're being directed, like, if these serious things are happening, here's how you hide it from parents. So, like,
yeah,
what do you do as an educator? You're caught between
yeah,
these two extremes. So I want to talk about some, well, let's kind of put a bow on the story involving this young person. Obviously, the information comes out, and I don't know how much was new to you when the news reports came out. We published a lot of the emails that showed really how troubling the private communications between Jennifer Knight and this student were. I'll take you into my home and delete these emails so your parents don't see. Jules, you knew during this whole period of time, because your daughter was in that class, you knew and talked regularly with the mother of the young girl at the center of all of this. Yeah, I don't want you to disclose anything that was said in confidence, but I imagine that this was because they were from a different country, different language, different culture.
yeah.
How was she handling all of it?
So, I actually, during COVID, we didn't have a lot of co contact. Once it was during a time when we weren't having gatherings and things like that. We had arranged a play date, and like her daughter came out and met with my daughter once in the neighborhood and things. Well, but just to be clear, we didn't have a lot of contact during that time. That was one of the reasons why I didn't say something sooner. I feel if I would have known what was going on, I would have spoken up. That's probably another reason why he didn't tell me what was going on in the meetings, because I would have probably raised some flags earlier. But I had just heard around April or something during a birthday party that my daughter and I did not attend, that the girl was identifying. There was rumors she was identifying as a boy, but the people that were there didn't. There's like, it's weird. She doesn't seem like she is. There's nothing changing. And then I actually heard from my daughter um, during um, when at home, I asked her about what was going on with school. Like they're working on some things. And I said, well, who's working on what in your classroom? And she was telling me all about the people in her group. And this girl was in there. And when her and her friend were there at my house, and they were all in the same class together. And my daughter started telling me about when she came to the girl, she started to she was trying to keep it straight. Like she would say the girl's name, but then she'd go to the boy name, and then she's sitting there looking up. And my daughter has a speech, she has a stutter that she works through. She's been in therapy for that. And this is the first time I've ever seen this happen with her. But she was trying to keep it straight. She kept looking up as she's trying to get it straight. She was 10 years old at the time. And she was, sorry,
It's okay.
she she started to hyperventilate, trying to get out whether she was supposed to say she or he, because she's inside of school. When she's in school, she has to use a he. When she's outside of school, she has to use she. And I was like, what is going on? And she started to get to the point where she was like, and she couldn't take a breath. And I'm like, whoa, calm down, calm down. And her friend started crying. My daughter starts crying. And I'm like, what's going on? And she said, no, Mom, I have to get it right. And I'm like, no, you don't need to do any of this. This is my daughter. And I was like, I don't, and I hadn't talked to the mom. I didn't know. I only heard those rumors so far. And I said, I don't know what's going on with this girl, but you're my daughter. And what I'm seeing happening with you is not okay. And you don't need to participate in that anymore. This is not okay. And then her friend said, I said, if you guys, your school, the school had spent so much time teaching these kids to advocate for themselves. They provided safe spaces like the dark room in fifth grade where they could go in anytime they needed some space. And now they're being told, she told me that they had to do it the right way or they were going to get in trouble. They had to call the girl the boy name with the boy pronouns inside of school, and they had to call her the girl name and girl pronouns outside of school. And she said, we're not allowed to tell our parents. And she was just, they were both just upset. And I'm like, you guys, if this is something you don't feel comfortable with, you don't need to be doing this. I was just like, it was just so horrible to see that. So that, and she goes, no, Mom, I'm going to get in trouble. I said, listen, if your teacher has a problem with it, you tell her to talk to me. And then that's about the time when I talked to, Ryan, and I was telling him I'm really concerned about this. And then he shared some things that were going on. And I knew I had to be like, okay, how do I handle this without getting my husband in trouble? And still advocating for. So I tell and my daughter knows she can talk to me about anything. And I'm just like, if anybody tells you not to talk to your parents, you should always be able to go to your parents. Children need that support from their parents to come alongside them. And even if there is strife in that, families work through it. And so that's when I first had that impact. But it wasn't until the end of school when I reached out. We were doing a ice cream social like we would do in our park in our neighborhood. And I invited a bunch of the kids and families to come. I invited this family. And the mom reached out to me and said, sorry, we can't come. We're out of town. So I text back and I said, oh, well, on another note, I know we haven't gotten to talk for a while with COVID, but I just want to let you know, I know your family's been going through some things, and I'm always here for you. If you ever want to talk, now we can get together, and so reach out anytime. And she said, "Can I call you?" And I said, "Yes." She called me right then. And I was on the phone with her. I ended up putting Ryan on speakerphone, and she told me we're in hiding, where they were in a safe house. They had left school early after they found out what was happening to their daughter. They had been kept in the dark. They tried to confront Mrs. Knight and Mrs. Ritter. They were told that they were doing nothing wrong. They were following policy. She was afraid. Here they are in this foreign country, entrusting their daughter to the schools. And she sent me screenshots of some of the emails which you've seen from Mrs. Knight, and I was just floored. And when I showed this to Ryan, he didn't know that was going on either. And so he saw the teacher side and then getting insight to what was happening to this girl and her family. We were just blown away. I just couldn't believe this was happening.
Good God. As you're saying that, my heart rate is just going up. Like the
Yeah.
anxiety, that is insane. I mean, one of the things you said in there really struck me because I think it gets overlooked as we sort of focus on the gender ideology part of it. But the idea that any educator would try to tell a child, especially a fifth grader, don't tell your parents
Yeah.
for anything.
Right.
And what your child and other children went through at that age to try to, in their mind, keep up with the pronouns and stuff and the fear of doing it wrong is so stunning to me. When you guys realized, the extent to how bad this had been for this particular family, and they decided to pick up and move back to India. I mean, Ryan, as an educator, for a family to feel as if they had to flee the country to get away from one of your fellow teachers, how did that hit you?
Again, we're to build relationships and trust, and that's breaking the trust when we're breaking that partnership with our families. When we're told, keep it a secret, we started shutting the doors and having less parents in the hallways, less parents in as volunteers. I remember those emails, and that was kind of strange, where we need help, and now we're saying no. Again, all these clues looking back now is we're trying to keep parents out of our hallways, out of what's going on, seeing our artwork that is BLM driven and pride driven. We have flags in hallways and classrooms that weren't there before. And that's not what I signed up for. And that's not what a lot of us got into. That's not how my mom taught, my fifth grade teacher. We poured into our kids. We partnered with our families, and we just broke trust. We sent a family that we in our mission statement of welcoming and equity and all these words that we say, and we pushed this cultural family away in fear and shame. I remember hearing about her in the hallway in tears with the counselor and the principal and Mrs. Knight. I can't imagine what she went through. It was the last week of school and you're pulling your kid out, missing the end of the school year. Her brother, they pulled him out too. He was in the same grade I was teaching, and they took him out as well. And so he had to leave his friends and miss the ending of the school year. It's just heartbreaking. And hearing the mom's voice, it was a long conversation. And I couldn't believe it. And that's not what we were called to do. And I'm hearing from a lot of veteran teachers I'm so close to retirement. I've put in so many years, and the word I hear from families and teachers, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. I don't have choice where my kids go to school. I don't know what else I could do for my job, my career. And so many are just, you got to conform. You got to, bite your tongue. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't see what was happening. Maybe with the perspective that I had as a teacher and as a parent, I think I was at that spot at the right time to say, you know what, that's not okay. And the things that have happened since in conversations have affirmed the things that we believe are best for kids.
So you started, pushing back a little bit. I mean, I would characterize it as pushing back, whether it was as a teacher or as a parent. And I want to go through some of these things because, again, you have the emails. And to me, there's a lot of hypocrisy in these emails from the district because you mentioned some of the things. I mean, this is a district that is dripping with political symbols and indoctrination. There was one thing in particular, and you and I might actually have a different opinion on this, but you had a Blue Lives Matter flag up in your classroom, correct?
It was the thin blue
line. Oh
thin
yeah,
blue
sorry, not
line.
Blue Lives Matter. Thin blue line
No,
flag
thin blue
in
line.
support of law enforcement.
Yeah.
How long had you had that up in your classroom?
Just a couple days. It was actually part of a Black Lives Matter assignment that we were going to do. And I just went through the lesson again. I have it and I went through it again. And it said, bring in symbols and images and items that are important to you. And as the kids were going to do that, I wanted to model that as a teacher. The teachers were told to bring stuff in. And that was just one of the items representing family and friends and just appreciate the law enforcement and the people that put their lives at risk. And it was up for a couple days. And within a couple of days, Principal Ritter came in and said, take it down. And I said, well, is there a complaint from a kid, a parent, staff? Nope.
Just take it down. I have the
Yeah.
email here that she sent you. This is March of 2022, where she says, your third grade classroom is not a public or semi-public forum to express your personal opinion. When at work, you're acting as a representative of the school district. Displaying this flag in your classroom conveys that the district endorses its message. The flag in question is potentially disruptive and harmful because some students may associate its message with hostility against people of color. The absence of complaints from students does not mean the flag is not offensive. So
Yeah.
I'll say, personally, I don't think the thin blue line flag is offensive at all. I think it's been turned into, this controversial symbol. I'm actually opposed to it being in the classroom, but I'm opposed to anything except the American flag or the state of Washington, so I think it's a slippery slope. So I think what strikes me as hypocrisy here is, so you were told by the principal this has to come down, it might be disruptive. Meanwhile, they've got, what kind of flags are up in the district?
You name it. We got them all. They're all over the place. They're on lanyards. They're in
Black
the
Lives
hallway.
Matter?
We have Black Lives Matter, plenty of pride flags all around. And even recently, just our American flags have gone down. So that's something that's happening in our district right now. Another big task that Alicia and others are taking on. So for that, and again, it was just for 1 week. It was just to model. And even in the example, they have the LGBTQ flag as an example of what a teacher could put together to model. But that flag was in there. And then my flag. And again, just for a couple of days, for a week to model for the kids as they start building their digital representation of interest for them. I thought that was interesting that their model, their example that we were supposed to kind of base our lesson off of had a controversial flag, but my flag was not good enough. And even when the vice principal looked into it, looked in the policy, talked to the union president, nothing about that flag. They thought it should be fine. But for my principal, it was not okay.
You can't make it up. It's
Nope.
the depths of hypocrisy that
Yeah,
you have all these
totally
other
agree.
flags. If you're going to ban them all, fine. And that's kind of where I'm at it.
I'm with that.
But
Yeah.
you're not. I mean, you've got, transgender pride flags at school board meetings. So, and this is kind of the theme that I'm getting at is, they don't, maybe they don't see what they're doing as indoctrination or political, social agenda, but when they're doing it, it's fine. When you're making decisions for your child that go the opposite, that's not fine. So one of the other things, and I think if I'm reading this email correctly, you guys tried to opt your daughter out of some Pride Month activities? Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Why?
I'll speak for myself and then Jules can share. It's not their place to do it. As a teacher too, we were not trained to have those conversations. We were not prepared. I think that's again, partnership between schools and home. There's zero transparency. We didn't see any curriculum. We didn't see the plan behind it. And so we requested and we were approved to opt out.
Yeah, so you were approved to opt out, but I'm looking at this email from Shannon Ritter that's directed specifically to parents who asked to opt their kid out of Pride Month celebrations in June of 2022. She writes, I'm sending this response to you personally after receiving your email requesting your child opt out of all Pride-related activities. You had requested your child be provided with an alternative location during Pride-related activities. As we continue to engage in Pride Month, there will not be an opt-out option. And basically says that as a district, you have to do this because this is important for families to show that they support Pride. So were you granted an opt-out and then the principal took it back?
It was 7 days later, and it was the night before I think lessons were beginning in school. So 7 days later, out of nowhere came an email saying, never mind, you're denied. The school board and superintendent have decided that all students will participate. You can no longer opt out. and it was the night, I think it was a Sunday night before the lessons were going to begin, and so panic set in.
So you did not have, Jules, as a parent of a public school child, the ability to say, I don't want my kid to participate in that lesson.
Correct. And by the time this came up, I mean, I had already seen enough going on in Mrs. Knight's class and then had heard stuff that Ryan was experiencing where honestly, like I have said, like I've told them all, I learning about people, celebrating people of all lifestyles and ethnicities, whatever. I'm all for that. But this was being like agenda driven. The trust that I was just like, what are they going to do with this? How far are they going to take this? And so for me, I would be open to, because I don't want to shelter my child. And I think we need to learn about other cultures, people, and I think that's really good. And I even gave when Pride Month started, I talked with my daughter about the gentleman who created the decoding machine during World War.
Oh, yeah.
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 And I was like, and I told her the history and I told her what happened to that person and how tragic that was. And it was not okay, no matter who they are. And we had that whole talk. And then right before Pride Month it happened. And I just told her how important it is to respect and honor and love each person, regardless of what, I mean, it was such a diverse community.
Mm-hmm.
We had families from every lifestyle, religion, ethnicity, culture. It was just amazing that whole centennial, and in Olympia, it's very
Mm-hmm.
diverse anyway. And so, but by the time that came up, it was just the way they were handling it and some things going on and pushing on the kids. My concern was, they're not looking out for our children, that these are elementary age children, that they're pushing these ideologies and agendas on that they're not ready to be. And this isn't what schools should be for. This isn't to be pushing these idea, this much on our children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just didn't trust from what I knew, and I didn't even know about what was going on with the little girl
Well,
by that time.
I think it's this assumption that if you want to teach it to your kids, or you don't want the school to, that you're not going to teach love and acceptance to your kids. That only the government can, that only the school can. And this one is, if I got this email, I'd be so livid because the way that the principal, I mean, she basically suggests as much, like, if you need to do this or else, like, you're a bigot, basically. We have an ethical obligation to make sure all children and families are welcomed, honored, and treated with dignity in our schools, including your family. Historically, our LGBTQIA plus community has not been acknowledged or valued, so we are doing the work to address this. Ryan, as a teacher, do you need Pride Month in order to acknowledge, value students and treat all of your students with dignity and respect?
And that's the thing. During that time, I remember some other families of their cultures came up and said, "Hey, these other Asian cultures, and even just other months, we had things come up. We just kind of neglected them." And they said, "Well, what about me? And what about this?" And we kind of hyper focused on a couple of groups that we let down other parts of our community. And yeah, I know they were hurt by that, and started opening our eyes to what are we focusing on, what agenda, and who are we leaving behind? We're leaving out some groups.
Well, it was the kids. I mean, that's the thing. It was our children that really suffered through this and the separation of families. I had one of my friends, she and her wife, their son, attending the same school, when they were doing a lesson in Pride, and it was a story of some sort. I'm not sure if it was the drag queen story hour or what it was exactly, but he felt uncomfortable. And so he wanted to go in to advocate for himself, and he was told he wasn't allowed to. He had to come back into the room. And it happened with our daughter and some other children as well. So here they're being told, no, you are required to participate in this. And this mom, I was talking to her at the end of the year barbecue, and she was telling me she was really upset that her son was forced. And I asked her, I said, well, you're in the LGBTQ community. And so help me understand why you're so upset about the pride. She goes, we don't celebrate pride. She goes, have you ever been to a pride celebration? And I said, well, not really. I've seen some, but I haven't like, and she goes, and she just told me it was an excuse for people to be, to get naked and be inappropriate. And it's not appropriate for children. And we don't do that. And she goes, and regardless, my son has a choice and he should have a choice and he should never be forced. And I was like, yes. This is, yeah, none of our kids should be forced. No people, no families should not be forced. Like, when do we ever force anybody to celebrate anything in public schools? You know,
100%.
That's the thing. That's what I told Patrick Murphy when we went to talk to the superintendent. And it was amazing. It's just, it blows my mind that in a public school where we are trying to create a safe space for every culture, family, ethnicity, lifestyle person, that they are now building this where only where only a small group can feel safe. And if you don't agree with it, you know, it's, and like you said, it's just like with the flags. If you're not going to include everything and let everything come in, then don't include any of it. Let's just make this a neutral space for our families and our public.
For education.
Everyone to feel safe.
Like, God forbid we just focus on education.
Yes.
Ryan, a couple of things, and again, I'm just reading these documents. So if I'm mischaracterizing or misunderstanding any of them, please tell me. But you got sent an email, the subject line is uncivil behavior and inappropriate use of district technology via email. So as this is going on, there's a couple things happening. First of all, there are teachers behind the scenes who you're public enemy number one. They're sending emails. They're trying to kind of gather information on you, saying that you're making kind of hateful remarks or people feeling uncomfortable because of your views on some of this stuff. Did you ever say anything hateful or derogatory around your fellow teachers?
No. No, and what she was a kindergarten teacher, who I rarely talked to, said I said something in the staff lounge, which I never ate in the staff lounge, never went in there. She said I had shirts on with symbols or flags that I never wore to school. She searched social media, talked about other groups and community groups that I'm a part of. She just started saying stuff and then just sending the emails. You saw it went to district office, went to principals.
Yep.
And when you follow that whole trail to the very end where the director of elementary education said, none of this happened.
Yeah, she says in an email to Jody, who I'm assuming is the person who made these complaints.
Jody is the union president who's supposed to have my back and would check in with me possibly about this, but never did. So this went to the union president as well, where I was a union rep, and that was mentioned in there too by my union president, who pretty much made me look bad.
Yeah, and so the executive director of elementary education concluded at this time, it's under our understanding there was no comment like this made in a staff room. But the other thing that was going on, I just want to pull up this email so I can reference it really quick. So you got, basically, this is the email that says uncivil behavior and inappropriate use of district technology via email. You got in trouble for informing parents that the district had changed its mind about allowing them to opt out?
Yes, that's correct.
So did you send it out to all parents or a select group of parents who did want to opt out, or?
I sent it out to the my entire class parents, as I had found out that without my knowing, I ended up being about half, maybe just under half of my class had opted out.
Wow.
I never made a comment, never talked about even you could opt out. Just from the email, the initial email you saw, I think it was June 1st from Shannon Ritter to all parents, ended up being about just under half of my group had pursued the opt-out, were granted, and then all of a sudden I was being flooded with emails saying, what happened, what's going on? Panic was setting in, just like for me as a parent to my child. And so a response to all parents, I understand what's going on. Let me know how I can help.
Yeah.
And that was the issue. But there's some other underlying things with the building level concern against my principal and other things that started piling up. And I think they took this as an opportunity to go after me and
Yeah.
harass me, and lots of different things that I've shared with you, and hope to share more
Yeah.
about how things kind of went after me. Again, I wasn't going to conform. I didn't really speak out against it. I just wasn't going to play along or go along with it.
You just communicated with the parents.
Well, which should be okay,
Yeah.
especially when their expectations were not met. They opt their children out, all of a sudden their children weren't opted out, and your email is
Yeah.
printed here. Today there was a notice sent out that you may no longer opt out. Basically, I know some of you are concerned. If you have any questions due to this quick change, let me know, kind of a basic thing. And you were told by the principal, by sending this email, you made an assumption that all families' viewpoints were in alignment with your own personal beliefs, which is interesting because they just told you that no one could opt out of pride. So it's like they don't even care if it's not what they're doing is not in line with parents' personal beliefs. They're forcing it upon them anyway. Yet you send this one email, and all of a sudden you're the one forcing your political beliefs on parents. It's just wild. So you ended up quitting your job and taking your daughter out of the district, correct?
Yeah, I resigned after we had I had two meetings with the director of elementary education, my union president. The last week of school when I should be those final moments with my kids, they pulled me out. It was really bad. They harassed me, attacked me, even knowing that the email claim was false. Days before that, they still used that against me in those meetings. My end of the year checkout with my principal, she didn't want to meet with me. I pretty much, I kept asking. She finally did. She said I was a danger to kids. She said I'm the reason for the climate in our building.
She's called you a danger to kids.
She said to my face, I am a danger to kids. It also came up from the director of elementary education. You can see they wanted me to go to all these trainings because it was like, indoctrination camp they wanted me to go to learn about all these different groups. And then after that, that was pretty much it. And then we talked to Superintendent Patrick Murphy like the week after. And at that point, it was time to go. So resigned, packed up, left there. We're taking care of two foster babies at the time. And so here we are leaving our home, leaving our school, leaving our daughter's friends. What are we going to do? But we just knew we couldn't go back there. After talking to Patrick Murphy, it was the last straw. I mean, we should have been the last straw a long time ago. And yeah. And look at the years that followed. I was the issue. And not much has happened in that building in the last 2 years, has there? I'm not sure.
Yeah. No stories. The thing is, all those stories we covered, they don't think they're an issue. So
Yeah.
you can bring,
Oh, no.
excuse my language, you can bring your own dildo to class.
Yeah.
You can, all these stories we've covered, and you're not the problem. I mean, to the best of your knowledge, because I know one of our chief concerns with covering these issues is we're never allowed to know about the outcome of teacher discipline. So we'll cover a story on something clearly egregious,
Yeah.
and then we'll never get to know what happened. Do you know if there was any punishment for Jennifer Knight?
That's my big question. If I got a letter in my file and it's pretty bad, and for just sending an email, and I'm curious to what she got. They hit her off to another school, a more progressive school, one that already has a history with Planned Parenthood lessons on gender. She's in a spot where she can actually do a little bit more. And so they just hide her. That's kind of the district way, but we've seen other people kind of move and hide. And so that's my thing. Does she have a letter? What does it look like? What was she required to do? And I wish I could find out that information. I highly doubt it, because when we talked to the superintendent, we barely got Jennifer out of our mouth. And he said, "Oh, isn't she amazing? She's such a great teacher." And she was always on a high pedestal. She was always one that the district would come and take pictures or present at our building. Centennial was the building that we would do all the conferences from, and the awards would come from. And so the Centennial way is definitely different. And I don't think they've done anything to her. They probably applaud her. I know you saw that school board meeting where Champion and Knight and the other teacher, the one who claimed, was also there. I can't say her name right now because of other things going on, but she was the kindergarten teacher that made that false accusation about me. All three of them were applauded the next day from that board meeting and celebrated for what they've done. And now look in the news of Champion and Knight and the kindergarten teacher.
Jules, I saw visibly on your face you getting incredibly angry as he was talking about the decision to leave. I don't know if that was just, you looked like you were getting angrier and angrier or more upset. I mean, what was all this like to watch this happen to your husband and have to pull your daughter?
It was horrible. It was devastating for our family because there's so much disbelief at first. Like Ryan hung on and I don't know, there was a sense, even I had this sense of this has got to make sense. Like there's got to be an answer. And that's when we went to go talk to Patrick Murphy. First of all, I was like, I know what you're trying to do, and it's not working. I go, let's look at it like this. Let's take Christmas. I could sit down with anybody and I can tell them everything they needed to learn about Christmas, from Santa Claus and the reindeer to Jesus in the manger. And I could teach them about all of these different things, um, from wrapping presents, cutting down trees, decorating them, dancing, singing the songs. And by the time we were done, they would know why we celebrate Christmas, how we celebrate Christmas, and understand that culture. But the difference is if I sat there and said, now you have to celebrate it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in the manger. You have to sing the songs, wear the sweaters, decorate the tree, do the dances. And a lot of these things are against certain cultures or different religions and he said I said, so what would happen then? And he goes and he looks at me and he goes, we don't want to just learn about it. We want to celebrate it. And I said, so let me be clear. I said, so it doesn't matter what culture, religion, lifestyle, or just a person's personal choice if they didn't want to participate, for children or families or any person. You are going to make them. You would require a person to celebrate, not just learn, but celebrate.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, yes.
Wow.
And that was the instant I knew my daughter was leaving.
Wow.
We were going. I told Ryan, I said, listen, I know, we went out to the car. I said, I know that this is your career, that you are heavily invested in. He takes pride in it. His heart was breaking. He's in tears. And I said, I will support you in whatever you decide, but you have a target on your back. And that just made it very clear to me, my child's not safe, and neither are these other children.
Yeah.
And every family should feel safe going to public school. And so I said, but we are not going back. She's done. And then
Wow.
I looked into private schools.
So, is that where your daughter is now, a private school?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you guys afford it?
Well,
Mm.
now that, yeah,
You're making it happen. We'll just say that.
yes,
Hey, joy, and I go for myself. I took a third of a pay cut, but I'll tell you, there's joy is so much more important. My
Mm.
daughter with safety and people she
yeah,
loves around her. Her
yeah,
speech is better, her academics. I'm telling you, she's a whole new person. And I kept talking to a couple parents the last couple of weeks who are still connected to the story. I have safety. Our schools should be safe physically, emotionally, academically, all these areas, and they were not. And she felt it, and we saw the impact on her. And every parent
yeah,
deserves to have their kid go to a safe school and trust the teachers, the school board, and the principals. And it's not happening. We see the news every day. I follow it. We're not giving up. And that's why we're with you, Brandi. We appreciate what you're doing. We're fighting because we know the families. We still talk to the families. They can't talk. They're scared to talk. They're ashamed to talk. They're in fear of what's going to happen, retaliation. Look at me.
yeah.
I got teachers in there who are just like, I wish I could. I
Gosh.
can't. So I'll be the voice. We'll be the voice. And we will speak up and fight because we need to save our schools because they're under attack.